Hello, my name is Mordred Viking, and I'd like to welcome you to this new series. With the release of Emperor, and Emperor being a really good DLC with lots of new features and mechanics, I thought that it was a good opportunity to start working on a new beginner-friendly game for Europa Universalis. I know that there are a lot of people that are just starting to get interested in EU4. I also know that my own channel has grown a fair amount, and people are like seeing EU4 for the first time because I haven't played it for like a year because of the pending update. So I know that there is a large audience of people who are interested in this, kind of like the look of it, but also going, oh my gosh, how complicated is this? It's deep. I wouldn't necessarily say it's complicated. You can very much get going with just a surface level knowledge of the various features and mechanics of the game, and then as you try to do more with it, you will uncover more and more tools which will enable you to do that. And the purpose of this series right now is to play as a nation which I think is going to be a good introduction to the game, and then basically go through this stuff together. So Castile can go expansionist, they can be militaristic, they can go into North Africa, they can try to go up against France, though that's going to be difficult. They can go colonial, they can establish an enormous global empire, and historically they did, and in this they are very good at doing that. And then they can also pursue trade. Some of the most lucrative trade routes flow through here in the Mediterranean and also out of the Caribbean, and you're just in a very, very good position to pursue that. You can be naval, you have a huge coastline, you can build up lots of ships. You have actually a surprisingly effective and powerful military. So Castile is just very good for that. The Ottomans do a lot of things that Castile does, but better, minus the colonizations. They're kind of in a similar position as Muscovy, where they don't get as much of the colonization. That's not to say you can't. That's one of the great things about Europa Universalis IV, where you absolutely can do these things. Is just going to be more difficult for you to do. So if you want, again, another very safe, very expansionist nation, so if you want to do a lot of fighting, play as the Ottomans. If you want to do a lot of expanding across the entirety of Russia, possibly going up against the Asian powers, and certainly being a kingmaker in Europe, play as Muscovy. If you want to do a little bit of everything, and this honestly is what I would recommend on your first playthrough, play as Castile. Now another question which is often raised is it a good idea to play as a big country or a small country? And in many games I would say play as the small guy, because you have less impact, there are less people trying to bully you. Not in this. In this you want to be one of the big boys when you're first playing. As a larger nation you are able to lose a war or two. It will not impact you, and this is one of the things that you absolutely need to have in your mindset when playing Europa Universalis IV. It is okay to lose. This game has something which is kind of rare in strategy games, something I call bounce back ability. You can lose a war, and then after a couple of years game time, you're back into the game, and you're once again a regional, if not global power. Nations like Castile, like France, like Muscovy, like England have bounce back ability because they are big enough where they can fail a couple of times. Whereas if you're playing as, say, the tiny nation of Hamburg, you lose one war, you are out. Your nation has been conquered by somebody else. You cannot kind of retrench back a little bit and then push out again. Whereas as the big nations, you can. This game also has a lot of tools to help you managing larger powers. So very often kind of one of the restrictions is if you're a really big nation, it's very difficult to deal with the vast numbers of armies, the amount of trade you're doing, dealing with all of your provinces. Not true in EU4. EU4 is actually very, very good with its UI and like how to deal with a bigger nation. Yes, it can get a little bit overwhelming later on when you are literally controlling 3/4 of the world, but when you're just the size of Iberia with a couple of colonies, it's totally fine. Honestly, even as somebody completely new to strategy games. So, we are going to be playing as Castile, so we're going to click on Castile. It should be mentioned that you can play as absolutely any nation in this game, and at this point, particularly if you have all the DLC, and I am approaching this from the idea that you do. I'm not saying that you absolutely need to, you definitely don't. It's just easier if I explain with everything in place. I must admit, I am not 100% sure what each DLC adds. I've had them all for so long. I'm also not 100% sure which ones to recommend you get first. This is another very, very popular question. It's like, which DLC should I get? And in the past, I would have said you need this, 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 and this. Absolutely. Not so much anymore. A lot of the big mechanical changes that some of these downloadable content expansions added have actually been made part of the base game because they were so big. So it's no longer critical that you own a couple of them. Most of them just kind of add flavor to different areas. Some of them do add a couple of like usability tweaks and fixes, but for the most part you can do perfectly well with the base game and then expand the amount of downloadable content you have once you've kind of realized, yes, I like this game, no, I don't like this game. And also this game goes on sale a lot. It is very, very frequently on sale, so do not buy the expansions full price unless it's like the newest one, because it will be on sale and you can absolutely find it for cheaper. I'm just going to front load and say that because I realise when you take a look at all of the DLCs, it can be very pricey. But again, get them cheap. So, Castile. What do we need to know about the country? Well, the most important thing, probably for the countries outside of their geographical location and what neighbours and possibilities they may have, is their national character. And the national character is the best described by their ideas. So every nation, pretty much at this stage in the game, has a set of national ideas. These are a group of modifiers which help in defining a certain identity for a nation, and it kind of shows what that country is good at in comparison to some others. So if we take a look at the Castellan ideas, they start out with traditions. Every country starts out with these traditions. So they have morale of armies plus 15%. This means that their armies are stronger, and 15% is a big boost. Castellan armies are scary at the start of the game, which is another reason it's good for beginners, because you are much less likely to you're much more likely to win wars than if you didn't have that. And then the Marines force limit means that you can actually get Marine forces, but that's not relevant at the start, honestly. We'll talk more about that later. There are different unit types, there are different ways of balancing your armies. Not important right now. Then you get these ideas throughout the process of the game. So as you progress through developing your country through what are called general ideas, you will unlock the national ideas. And these are Reconquista. This will give you yearly tradition decay, which basically means that your armies will be more competent at fighting. They will have, during periods of peace, their military standing will decrease slower. So basically when you're at war, this is actually really difficult to describe. When you're at war, you get better at fighting because you're fighting a lot. Then during the peace times, your people kind of forget how to fight as good. The process of you forgetting how to fight good is slower with this. Spanish Inquisition, which nobody expects, gives you more missionaries. This means it's going to be much easier to convert territories to your faith, which generally for Castile should remain Catholic. You can do this to more territories, and as you start expanding out and building your global empire, this is going to become increasingly important. And then missionary strength plus 2% basically boosts how efficient your missionaries are. So not only can you have more missionary missions in process and in play at one time, they are also quicker and cheaper at doing it. Then we have got production efficiency. This just increases the amount of money you make. We have the inner Terra, which is colonists. So this is a big boon. Basically, for every colonist you have in play, you can colonize a province. So if you have a free colonist, then you can start colonizing full stop. Most countries don't start with a colonist. You have to get these general ideas to do that. And if you do have, say, exploration, which is one of those ideas, again, we'll touch on this later when it becomes relevant, you will be able to colonize more stuff faster and cheaper. Diplomatic reputation and chance of new heir. Diplomatic reputation will mean that you can make alliances and diplomatic deals more easily. People like you and trust you more in your initial interactions. Obviously, trust and relations will increase and decrease over time, depending on your actions and their actions, and your shared or rival interests. You will generally have an easier time making more beneficial alliances. School of Salamanca institution spread. So the way the technology in this works is it kind of spreads over the map. one place will kind of go, aha, I know the Renaissance, and then the Renaissance will spread from that place to the rest of the globe. Many, possibly even most, of these so-called institutions do start in Europe, and because Castile has the institution spread bonus, it means that they will be able to acquire this technological experience more quickly than other nations might be able to. It's not as good as just a straight up technology bonus, but it's close. And then the monthly autonomy change basically means that they can just grow and incorporate territories more quickly and more efficiently. And then finally, once you have completed all of these Castellan ideas, you will then also have the Castellon Ambition, which will allow your settlers to grow faster. So once you have placed a colonist and that colonist has started developing a colony, the speed that that colony will grow is dependent on your settler increase, and plus 25 is a big increase. So again, Castile very, very good at kind of playing a bit more expansionist and like gobbling up large parts of the world, particularly the areas which are not exactly free. Because that's definitely not true. People already live here, but they're definitely better at making it more yellow. Colonization. Not always the best topic. Anyway, so we are going to press play. We're going to begin as Castile. There are one or two options I just want to run through before I do this. Difficulty. So you can click down here, game options. There are two I want to talk about. Difficulty number 1. Playing on easy, yeah, you can do that, but I would really recommend normal. Normal is what everything is balanced around. So even if this is your first time playing, normal is fine. You should be able to do just fine on normal with one of the larger nations. And then Lucky Nations is the other one. So Lucky Nations will try to push the game in a more historical path. I personally don't like Lucky Nations. I always turn this off just because I like how dynamic the game can be. If a country is doing well because of its in-game exploits, then that country deserves to grow and prosper. If a country is doing well simply because historically it did well, that's less interesting to me. So I turn Lucky Nations off. That's basically what that option is doing. However, if you're interested in achievements, then you need to make sure everything's set to default. I don't really care about achievements, so I just leave that off. Okay. Let's play. Okay, so Kingdom of Castile in 1444. Shaped in the battles of the Reconquista, the crown of Castile is in fact not just one kingdom, but a union of kingdoms of Castile, Leon, Toledo, Galicia, Murcia, Jean, Cordoba, and Seville under the Castellan branch of the Trastamara dynasty. What remains of the Moorish presence in Iberia is now restricted to the southern kingdom of Granada, still a rich Muslim sultanate in many ways, but also marred by infighting and frequent border skirmishes with the Christian raiders. So again, we are Castile. Granada, which is a Muslim state, is the one down here. And then there is also Aragon, which we will, I'm sure, touch on in a minute. But otherwise, we basically control this whole area, although it can be subdivided into these other kingdoms. Don't worry about that. Almost certainly not relevant. For now, however, and I'm not just saying that to be facetious, I mean that. For now, however, Castile has problems of its own. The Castellan nobles and the local cortes of the various constituent kingdoms still hold a large degree of power, and many Trastamara kings have found themselves at the mercy of the estates of their kingdoms. Factions acting entirely of their own interests have not shied away from supporting foreign pretenders from Portugal and Aragon in the past. If the kingdom can be united by a strong ruler and the Reconquista completed, Castile will have a fierce military force in its hands with a long tradition of fighting for the expansion of the Christian faith. While Castile lacks the seafaring tradition of neighbouring Portugal, they have just as good access to the Atlantic Ocean and the new trade routes that are opening up west and south east. They are Catholic. The Catholic faith gives the following modifiers: tolerance to the true faith +1, which basically means that Catholic nation or Catholic states are more stable. So any province that you have which is Catholic in your country are going to be more stable. They will revolt less frequently. Tolerance of heretics -1, which means that if you have Protestants, Reformed, Hussites, or Anglicans, these are all different, and Orthodox, these are all different branches of Christianity, then they will be less content. So it's already going to cause problems because they are not of your state faith. This will cause even more problems because you are Catholic. Catholic countries can also interact with the papacy using papal influence. We'll talk about that. Influence can be used to become the papal controller or get favours from the papacy. So your benefit being a Catholic is the papacy. You can get boons and bonuses by talking and interacting with the Pope and the papacy and the Curia as a whole. Once colonization of the New World starts, the papacy will bestow colonial regions upon favoured countries, with penalties for other Catholics that trespass. So it is possible as a Catholic to basically claim areas of the New World, and only you are able to colonize those areas. Others can do it, but it will tick off the whole of Christendom if they do. So this is historically how, for example, Spain and Portugal divided up South and Central America between each other. In the early start date, most of the Christian world is Catholic, but over time, reform desire will build up as a result of the collective actions of all Catholic rulers. Once reform desire is high enough, the Reformation will start, and the Protestant and Reformed faiths will start to rapidly spread from the centres of Reformation. Right, government. Kingdoms are monarchies. This means that the ruler is in place for life and his succession is dependent on having a designated heir. Heirs are acquired either over time or through event choices. If the monarch dies before your heir reaches maturity, a regency council can take over, preventing the declaration of wars. Monarchs can also have consorts, which can be acquired through royal marriages, through events, or when an heir is created. A consort will rule until the heir reaches maturity instead of the regency council. Your government is augmented by the estates of the realm. These can differ from country to country, but represent strong interest groups within your country that can give you powerful benefits if they are loyal and influential. An estate might also be a great hindrance if it is disloyal or influential, however. Their influence and loyalty can be increased through choices in events, as well as by distributing a greater share of crown land to them. Don't worry, we'll go through what all of this actually means when we have the mechanics in front of us. All governments use government reforms. These reforms gradually add distinctive bonuses to a government over the course of the game. Reforms are unlocked by the accumulation of reform progress points, which are passively gained at a rate determined by the average autonomy level of your provinces. So this will allow you to customize how exactly your government functions, allowing you to basically refine your government form into more of what your playstyle is. So if you want to play super expansionist, you can kind of take reforms which will aid you in that. If you want to be more insular and building what's called tall, where you develop up your provinces very highly rather than trying to expand elsewhere, then there are government reforms for that. And there's all kinds of different things you can do. Europe is home to the Holy Roman Empire, a giant but largely divided empire that dominates the German and northern Italian regions. Upon the death of the emperor, the imperial electors select his replacement by voting. A member can become elector by being granted an electorate by the current emperor or inheriting an elector. Countries within the Holy Roman Empire are allowed their own diplomacy and can even have their own subjects. In fact, I don't think I'm going to cover this. This isn't really relevant to you in Castile. You just need to be aware that if you try to expand into Germany, it's going to be slow and difficult as a nation which is outside of the Holy Roman Empire. I don't want to get bogged down with the actual politics and mechanics within the empire, because it really isn't relevant to you. It's unlikely that you're going to be able to do that. So, we're in the game. And the first thing you will notice is it is paused. This is important. Do not unpause the game until you are ready. There are a couple of setup things that you really need to do before you can actually start playing. And this is all about just like preparing your country for doing what you want to do. So the first thing that I want to cover is the big shield here. This is where you can access basically all of the controls over what your country does. Every nation will have their own shield up in the corner depending on the nation you are playing. So if you're playing as England, it will be the English shield. If you're playing as France, it will be the French shield. Irrelevant. All of that is simply you click on the shield, and then you have these various tabs which basically subdivide all of the tools which you have at your control. It is not important to understand what all of these do yet. As we go through the game, more and more of this will become active, and you can start to actually begin fiddling in the various areas. You don't need to understand all of it. I will briefly go through what each of these tabs is and what it does, and then we'll start the proper setup. So first of all, we have the court. This is to do with your dynasty and to do with some of the basics of your government. The important number here is knowing who your ruler is, which is this one at the top. For a monarchy, knowing who your heir is, that's the one in the middle. and then also knowing who your consort is, so the king or the queen married to your ruler. Or if you don't have one, it'll say you don't have one, and you probably should go and get one. So King Juan II of Trastamara is a terrible monarch. His son is even worse. Castile's in kind of a bad way for that. And kind of similarly to England, you are going to have a little bit of a slower political start because of that, though you're definitely not going to be put as far back as England is. So what does the 112 mean? Well, these are your administrative, diplomatic, and military monarch points, and this is basically determining how many of those you generate every month. This can be further modified by your country. You can choose to focus in one of those directions, and then also your advisors, which is what these slots are. So for example, if you wanted to increase the amount of admin points you were generating, and we'll talk about what exactly these are used for in a moment, then you could hire an advisor. Be aware though that advisors are quite pricey. So you can see these guys were level +1. These are level 1 advisors. They are the cheapest, but they also provide just 1 extra point per month. Then we also here at the start have access to level 2s, and you will eventually unlock level 3s. It is possible to upgrade an advisor all the way to level 5. That gets incredibly pricey though, and there are a couple of things that you probably want to have in place before you do that. But it is important to know that it is possible to hire advisors, which allows you to further tweak how many points you're generating in each different direction. So the two most important things that points are spent for: number 1, technology. So if we go over here to the tech screen, you can see that technology is also divided into 3 different categories: admin, diplomacy, or diplomatic, and then military. You will spend military, diplo, or admin points on getting a new technology. These are expensive. So going from military tech level 3 to admin tech level 3 to admin tech level 4, you will need 598 power, which at the current rate of generating points will not be until 1460. So that's 16 years from now. That's not unusual. That's perfectly reasonable within the scope of the game. Remember, EU4 is supposed to cover a large period of human history. So the fact that technologies don't advance very quickly is a part of that, although they will advance more quickly as you start generating more admin points, and you can also start tweaking the costs of technologies through ideas, through events, through advisors, through national ideas. There's a whole bunch of things which can affect this. But generally, you will be saving up these points in order to advance your technology. The other thing are ideas. That's what these are. So you have your national ideas, which are the ones unique to your country. Only your country gets these, or at least that set of ideas. There can be some, like France also gets a morale buff, but not as early as Castile, and is a bit stronger. But again, later on. And then there's also the general ideas, which is what these are. And each of these, if you click on the first unlock, is again split into administrative, diplomatic, and military. So again, you will be spending your monarch points on unlocking these ideas. And every idea group, which is one of these grey boxes, has a number of subdivided ideas. These are the actual ideas. So if you select innovative ideas as your first group, and you will need to make a choice as to which group you are focusing on. So that is innovative within admin. So you select innovative, you will then unlock all of these, and you'll slowly work your way through them, and it will cost you admin points because it's in the admin section. Each of these will basically allow you to customize your nation further into doing a variety of things. If you want to improve your military strength, you probably take something like offensive or defensive. If you wish to improve the strength of your fleet and become better at just general naval activities, you'll take either naval or maritime. If you want to be focusing on colonization or expanding around the globe, you'll probably take exploration or expansion. If you want to do more diplomacy, get stronger alliances, begin integrating vassals, you would take diplomatic or influence. If you want to build up your economy, if you want to make more money, then you'd probably take economic or trade. You can kind of see how this is developing and how this might affect the future development of your country. Obviously, some of these ideas will be more useful for some countries than other. So taking expansion as Odiev, probably not that useful. You're kind of surrounded by other opponents. You're not going to have that many routes of expansion. There are some uses for it though. However, taking, say, trade as Holland or the Netherlands, probably pretty strong. They are historically a trading power, and that's you doubling down on that effect. Similarly with Castile, if you aim to get expansion or exploration ideas early, then that's going to assist you in colonizing earlier and therefore building up your empire more quickly and being able to reap the rewards from having it faster and sooner and basically using it against your opponents. So very important use of the Monarch points, and again you'll be kind of balancing their use. However, there are many other uses for these points. You will sometimes get an event saying like your heir has been caught doing some bad stuff. You can make the problem go away by spending some Diplo points. Or your army has gotten lax and is not fighting very well. You can try and stiffen their resolve by spending some military points. There are also different uses for the points mechanically. If you want to strengthen your government, so for example if you want to make your legitimacy go up, you spend some military points. If you want to integrate territories which you have recently conquered, called coring, then you will need to spend admin points. If you want to maintain more diplomatic relations, then you can naturally do. So ordinarily you'd have 4 diplomacy slots, and say you wanted to have 6 allies, then you would need to spend extra Diplo points to maintain that. So you can kind of see how these points would kind of factor into many different areas of the game.